Lu Mingfei had always been such a pathetic nobody that half the school doubted he'd even manage to graduate. Yet for once in his miserable existence, he tried doing something brave. He confessed to the girl he'd adored for years. Predictably, she chose a wealthy, handsome guy instead of him, because honestly, Mingfei didn't have a single winning trait. Still, that humiliating moment became the unexpected turning point of his destiny, one dramatic enough that even someone like Jing Wu would have envied it. Mingfei had always been a powerless, awkward shut-in who hid away in his dim little room like a cave-dwelling troll. Every day he would lock himself inside his cluttered man cave, greasy keyboard in hand, drowning in the online world because the real world rejected him. The only place he ever felt competent was behind that keyboard. In the gaming community, he wasn't a clown, he was a legend, one of the strongest players the server had ever seen. Right now, he was sweating through a tense match against his only real companion, an online friend who didn't even know his actual name. Mingfei slammed the keys like his life depended on every input, fingers moving faster than his GPA ever had. Somehow, he managed to land a victory. He didn't brag, didn't celebrate. He simply watched his friend log off as the moment's satisfaction faded. The joy vanished instantly, because when the server shut down, so did any spark inside Mingfei. Out of boredom and loneliness, he opened the profile of the girl he'd catfished himself into falling for, an online crush who wasn't even real. He was ready to drool over her photos, nearly dripping onto his moldy keyboard, when a duel request suddenly popped up. The challenger's name, Nano, a top-tier player with an intimidating reputation. Mingfei accepted immediately, convinced this would be another easy victim for his greasy wrists and years of muscle memory. But the moment the match began, that confidence shattered into dust. Nano wasn't just good. Nano played at a level that was downright terrifying. Mingfei actually had to stand up from his chair, body tense like he had suddenly been dropped into an esports final stage. Then came the ultimate humiliation. In the middle of the match, Nano slid into his DMs and typed out the exact move Mingfei was about to make before he made it. And worse, Nano predicted correctly every single time. In the end, Mingfei got obliterated so brutally that he froze in his chair, staring at the defeat as if his soul had temporarily left his body. He checked Nano's profile, but it was blank. No info, no history, nothing. Just a mysterious final boss disguised as a player. Crushed, he logged off, but somewhere across the city, the truth was revealed. Nano was none other than Chen Motong, a high-ranking hybrid slayer from Cassell College. She was driving around with her friends, laughing and chatting when the name Lu Mingfei came up. Apparently, Principal Anju himself believed Mingfei was a potential S-rank hybrid candidate. Motong found that impossible. She had personally tested his skills in-game precisely because she didn't trust the rumors. After destroying him effortlessly, she was even more confused and irritated when she found out he had already received a scholarship offer from the principal. Annoyed and curious, she opened Cassell's AI system, Eva, and searched for his background. The data dumped his entire life story in seconds. No friends in school, no presence in society, abandoned by his parents at a young age, and stuck living with his aunt, uncle, and his useless cousin Lu Mingze, all of whom treated him like garbage. To make things even more pathetic, Mingfei's only fun in the real world was trolling Mingze online, catfishing him through fake accounts just to get back at him. His family berated him daily, lecturing him to get a job, calling him a future failure who would die poor. Eva revealed something even worse. Mingfei's dream wasn't to be a hero, or a scholar, or even a hybrid warrior. No, his dream was to work at a newsstand, just so he could save enough money to recharge his gaming account. Mo Tong was speechless. Her friend almost crashed the car from laughing at the idea that this guy could ever be S-rank material. Meanwhile, Mingfei was sent out to run errands. On his way, he checked the mailbox and found 2 letters and a strange device. The first letter was predictable, a rejection from an international university. The second, an unexpected unexpected acceptance into Cassell College, personally signed by Professor Guderian, who said he wanted to mentor him. Mingfei slapped himself repeatedly to confirm he wasn't hallucinating, but it was real. Overwhelmed with excitement, he ran home to share the news, only for his family to immediately accuse him of it. His aunt called it a scam, and his cousin Mingzei laughed in his face, saying a nobody like him could never get into the same academy that produced legends like Chu Zihang. While they mocked him, Mingfei drifted into a fantasy where Chu Zihang descended from a helicopter, bowed respectfully, and addressed him as master. Then reality smacked him again. Maybe his family was right, maybe it was a scam. But just then, the strange device rang. His aunt picked it up and nearly froze when the caller politely asked to confirm Mingfei's interview appointment for tomorrow. Suddenly, no one was laughing. Later that night, Mingfei shared everything with his online friend. For once, someone actually felt happy for him and even taught him how to behave during the interview. For the first time in his life, Mingfei felt a flicker of hope, clueless about how insane things were about to get. The next morning, he arrived at the interview building drenched in sweat. Things got worse when he saw some of his former classmates. Apparently, they all received the same acceptance letter. Standing among them was the final boss of his emotions, Chen Wenwen, his childhood crush. Just seeing her made him mentally collapse like a cheap chair. He awkwardly chatted with her, trying to act cool, while giving her a pep talk about how she'd always been the ideal student. She thanked him with a gentle smile, which, to someone like him, felt like winning the lottery. One by one, students entered the interview room until it was Mingfei's turn. He had stayed up all night rehearsing answers like he was cramming for finals. But instead of getting normal questions about his life or education, the examiner hit him with the strangest question imaginable. "Do you believe in aliens?" Mingfei nearly fainted. Another interviewer told him bluntly that his personal history didn't matter at all. Only these bizarre questions did. So Mingfei answered earnestly, explaining he believed aliens existed because the universe was too vast for humanity to be alone, and that he often gazed at the night sky thinking about it. When the interview finished, he apologized and walked out in frustration, convinced he had come to the wrong place. He practically rage quit the whole process. But inside the building, chaos erupted. Professor Guderian stormed into the room, furious that they let him leave. He demanded they call Mingfei back immediately. Even the interviewers were confused why this nobody mattered so much. On his way home, Mingfei ran into Wenwen, who casually asked if he'd like to go to the graduation party together. He agreed instantly, already imagining an entire romantic future with her. For a moment, Cassell College became irrelevant. But when he reached home, his aunt rushed to him with shocking news. Guderian himself had called. Mingfei had passed the interview and was officially accepted. The guy who walked out after one question somehow got in. The next day, he returned with his aunt, uncle, and Mingzei to meet Guderian in person. As expected, his aunt immediately began probing about money. The professor explained that Mingfei's scholarship included $36,000 per year directly deposited into his account, plus full accommodation at the academy. The moment she heard the number, she instantly switched sides and begged him to enroll. Then Guderian revealed the truth. Mingfei possessed a rare, century-old bloodline talent hidden deep within him. To explain, he presented a letter written by Mingfei's parents. They weren't heartless abandoners. They had once been honorary students of Cassell. His mother wrote that she left him not because she didn't care, but because her bloodline placed him in danger. She had asked the principal to one day grant her son a scholarship. Reading her words, Mingfei broke down. He ran to the bathroom as tears soaked the letter. For once, the comedic nobody had a moment of genuine emotion. His mother had loved him all along. She just couldn't stay.
Lu Mingfei's emotional meltdown didn't get to last long. Nano walked straight into the girl's bathroom, caught him sobbing like a horror movie extra, and roasted him so brutally that he almost forgot he was crying. Without an ounce of gentleness, she dragged him out like a babysitter escorting a misbehaving child and shoved him back into the meeting room. Once he was seated again, Professor Professor Guderian calmly asked what he thought about attending Cassell College. Instead of grabbing the opportunity like any sane person, Mingfei hesitated and told them he needed time to consider it. A golden ticket to one of the world's strongest hybrid academies was being handed to him on a silver platter, and his answer was basically, "Let me think about it." Before Guderian could respond, Nano exposed him instantly. She announced to the room that the real reason Mingfei was unsure was because he was hopelessly in love and didn't want to leave the girl behind. Mingfei nearly swallowed his tongue. How did she know about Chen Wenwen? For a second, he wondered if Nano secretly stalked him, but Nano casually admitted she just guessed. Even so, her words shook him, and then she slipped. She repeated something identical to what she'd said during their in-game duel. That one line made everything click inside Mingfei's tiny brain. Chen Motong was Nano, the top-tier gamer who humiliated him online. The embarrassment doubled instantly. Later that evening, Mingfei sulked alone on a rooftop, trying to understand how this girl knew so much about his life. He even pulled out his phone, preparing to confess his love to Wenwen like a low-budget romance protagonist. But just as he was about to humiliate himself, Nano appeared behind him, silently, like a jump scare. She told him Eva, the school's AI, could locate him anywhere, and that she'd been ordered by Guderian to convince him one last time. Yet Mingfei stubbornly refused again. He told her he couldn't join Cassell because he had to confess his feelings to Wenwen first. This clown was genuinely willing to throw away a future full of power, privilege, and danger for a girl who barely noticed him. Nano hit him with brutal honesty. Wenwen didn't like him, not even a little, and he was on the verge of ruining his life over a fantasy. But Mingfei clung to hope, insisting he still had a chance because Wenwen agreed to go to the party with him. Nano tried one last time to drill reality into his skull. If he refused now, the opportunity might vanish forever, but he wouldn't budge. The next day, he went shopping with Wenwen to get supplies for the graduation party. Nano confronted him again, warning him that the professor was leaving that night. His decision had to be made immediately. Still, he rejected her advice, preserving his dream of a dramatic love confession. Afterward, Mingfei went home and practiced his confession in front of a mirror like a walking soap opera cliche, repeating lines and gestures with cringe-level theatrics. Bro was so broke, he went outside and picked random wildflowers from the roadside to use as a bouquet. That was his whole romantic plan, flowers from dirt. When the party started, his friend Zhao Manku handed him a suit so he'd at least look somewhat presentable. Mingfei nervously walked onto the stage, clutching his wilted bouquet, ready to confess. But right before he could speak, Zhao marched up with his own bouquet and confessed to Wenwen first. And the worst part? Wenwen accepted it. She confessed she liked Zhao too. They had both been playing Mingfei like a violin. Zhao's friendship had been a setup for the perfect public humiliation. The girl Mingfei thought he was destined to be with crushed him in front of everyone. He froze, devastated, as his crush stomped on his heart and his best friend stabbed him in the back. Just when Mingfei thought life couldn't humiliate him further, Nano arrived. She walked down the steps dressed so stunningly that the entire crowd gasped like they were witnessing a celebrity entrance. She motioned to her subordinates, who immediately stripped Mingfei out of his cheap outfit and dressed him in something worthy of a main character. For once, he didn't look like a side NPC. He looked like someone important. Nano linked her arm with his, stunning the entire audience. And then she turned to Wenwen and Zhao, smiling sweetly while roasting both of them, saying Mingfei had far more important things waiting for him than this childish drama. Zhao nearly exploded with jealousy, but Nano cut him down with a single line, declaring that this would be the last time they'd ever see this version of Mingfei. She walked out with him on her arm, and Mingfei didn't even glance back at Wenwen, accidentally pulling the most alpha move of his entire life. They drove away until their car ran out of gas, leaving them stranded for a bit. Here, Nano finally dropped her tough attitude and admitted that if she failed to recruit him, she'd be in trouble. Mingfei, for the first time in ages, thanked her for not giving up on him. His stubbornness faded and he reconsidered. Finally, he agreed to join Cassell College. Nano instantly contacted Eva, who greeted him formally. Eva evaluated him, confirmed he was classified as S rank, and issued him a student ID. Finally, Nano went full ceremony mode, placing an imaginary crown on his head and declaring him the new king of Cassell College. Even though he hadn't accomplished anything yet, Mingfei looked overwhelmed, as if someone had just given him the cheat code to life. Then she warned him people would die or kill for someone with a status like his, just like they once did for his parents. And in a shocking gesture, Motong knelt and pledged to be his personal subordinate. For someone who spent his entire life being bullied and belittled, the upgrade felt surreal. He accepted her vow, and Eva updated the entire college system. An S-rank student had officially awakened. A few days later, Mingfei reached the airport to board the special transit to Cassell. That's when things went downhill again. When he politely asked an officer for directions to the Cassell College subway line, the officer stared at him like he was a stray dog and told him to go to his embassy if he needed food. Mingfei nearly exploded. He was a newly crowned king, yet here he was being mistaken for a homeless man. Things got worse when he tried buying a burger with his last bit of cash, only for the cashier to refuse service because they didn't serve beggars. Nearby homeless people even waved at him like he was one of them. As Mingfei was about to break down again, a silver-haired student approached him. This was Finger von Frings, a professional moocher known for borrowing money from everyone. Finger asked him for cash to buy a Coke. Mingfei refused, convinced he was being targeted by another scammer. But when Finger spotted Mingfei's Cassell subway card, his face changed instantly. He pulled out his own identical card, revealing he was a Cassell student too. In shock, Mingfei switched from despair to joy, and Finger still somehow managed to wheedle money out of him. While waiting for the subway, Finger launched into a dramatic monologue about his life. He wasn't famous for strength or achievement. He was infamous for failing so many classes that he got demoted from A rank to F rank. He explained the school's transportation hierarchy. Higher-ranked students got priority transportation, while low ranks like him had to wait endlessly. He also described how Cassell College was hidden deep within the mountains, only reachable through a secret transit system. Eventually, Finger fell asleep mid-speech, and Mingfei, tired of his own existence, decided to nap too. That's when Mingfei dreamed again. This time, a bizarre vision of people fleeing with torches, leaping from cliffs, and chaos everywhere. A small boy appeared and introduced himself as his brother. The child warned him about the approaching apocalypse, mocked him for staying soft-hearted despite years of misery, and even refused money that Mingfei tried to offer. The boy called him foolish, shattering him emotionally. Mingfei jolted awake to the sound of a bell. A conductor was ringing it and announcing the arrival of the underground train. But when Mingfei introduced himself, everything flipped. The conductor's eyes widened. Lu Mingfei, the long-awaited S-rank student, had finally arrived. Finger freaked out too, bragging that Mingfei's rank was equal to the principal's. And then came the kicker. If Mingfei had scanned his subway card earlier, the system would have immediately activated and the train would have arrived instantly. They had wasted an entire day waiting for no reason. Mingfei nearly fought the universe right there. Finally, he swiped his card. The entire airport shifted. Lights burst on, a hidden platform opened, and the secret Cassell College subway revealed itself. As they descended, Finger enthusiastically narrated that this grandeur was exactly what an S-rank deserved. But Mingfei's nerves spiked when he saw zombie-like figures lurking in the tunnels. Finger quickly assured him they were just hired actors used as atmospheric decorations. And then, the real journey to Cassell College began. The train screeched into the station with a thunderous roar, and before the doors had even fully opened, Professor Guderian launched himself out like an overly enthusiastic father greeting a long-lost son. He rushed straight to Lu Mingfei, wrapped him in an embarrassingly warm embrace, and declared with absolute pride that the entire school had been waiting specifically for him to arrive. It was the sort of dramatic entrance that made Mingfei feel important for the first time in his life, even though he stood there frozen, unsure how to react to such grand treatment. Once they boarded, Mingfei was immediately handed several thick stacks of documents, confidential agreements, waivers, identity files, and contracts that would officially lock him into his new life at Cassell College. Signing them felt surreal, like he was committing to something far bigger than his brain could process. After they finally managed to shake off Finger von Frings, who had been hovering around like a mosquito that refused to die, Guderian decided it was time to reveal the truth behind the school's existence. Cassell College, he explained, wasn't some elite academy for geniuses or a prestigious private school for rich prodigies. It wasn't a magical academy like the ones in storybooks either. In reality, Cassell was a fully functional, internationally hidden, dragon-slaying institution. Their classes were combat programs, strategic simulations, weapon studies, dragon biology lessons, and survival training for the kind of monsters humans weren't even supposed to believe existed. Students were trained to track, fight, kill, and survive encounters with creatures from ancient nightmares. Ming-Fei internally wondered if the professor had hit his head. Dragons? Combat? Fighting ancient monsters? To him, this all sounded like the kind of lore someone on the internet would make up. He was one comment away from calling the professor delusional, but before he could speak, he was yanked back into a trance, another mental collapse triggered by the same mysterious boy who appeared in his dreams. The boy told him with calm certainty that dragons were real, weaving a story about ancient history as if he had lived through it himself. He described how, thousands of years ago, the first dragon ancestor, Nidhogg, the Black Dragon Emperor, was slain on his throne. Its corpse was so massive and terrifying that people left it to freeze on a mountain, turning the peak into a graveyard the size of a city. Humans celebrated the death with festivals, cheering with a level of joy that could only come from defeating the ultimate evil. Ming-Fei asked the boy whether he had any relation to dragons, but the child denied it effortlessly, his face unreadable. Back in the real world, to push the point further, a man named Masashi Toyama arrived carrying physical evidence, a real dragon scale. He urged Ming-Fei to test its toughness. Still unconvinced, Ming-Fei dismissed it, so they escalated again. They brought out a baby dragon recovered all the way back in 1796, preserved in a containment pod and kept dormant for generations. The thing looked small, almost harmless, but when Ming-Fei leaned in out of curiosity, the creature's eyes flew open. It lashed out violently, thrashing inside the reinforced glass and shaking the entire container as if it had recognized Ming-Fei specifically. Only then did it collapse back into a deep sleep. Ming-Fei nearly passed out. Guderian calmly explained that it was likely tied to Ming-Fei's bloodline. Something in his lineage acted as a stimulus, almost like a provocation toward dragons. He joked that if they hadn't upgraded the containment pod last year, the entire train might have been wiped out. When they finally reached Cassell College, Ming-Fei stepped off the platform and saw what looked more like a fortified royal citadel than a school. Towers, reinforced steel structures, Gothic architecture, advanced technology, everything combined into a surreal blend of old and new. The interior hallways were wide and spotless, the lighting immaculate, the architecture grand. It was overwhelming for someone who'd lived most of his life being yelled at in a tiny apartment. As they walked, Guderian explained that many high-level dragons were currently dormant across China, which made the region one of the world's most dangerous yet most valuable research zones. Ming-Fei noticed an eerie emptiness to the hallways and asked where everyone was. Suddenly, Guderian stiffened and pulled him aside, telling him to duck immediately. They had wandered straight into Liberty Day, the school's most chaotic annual tradition, a campus-wide war simulation between the two major factions, Lionheart Society, led by Chu Zihong, and the Student Union, led by Caesar Gattuso. Students burst out of hiding spots with realistic weapons, smoke bombs, drones, and tactical equipment like they were reenacting a real military operation. Guderian was shot in the chest mid-sentence, falling dramatically like a crash test dummy. Ming-Fei found himself in the center of a battlefield. The conflict soon narrowed to the leaders and their snipers. Then things took a darker turn. Nano, serving as the Student Union sniper, got hit and collapsed. Something inside Ming-Fei snapped. The Dream Boy's voice filled his head once again, urging him to punish everyone, to judge them, to unleash whatever was inside him. In an instant, Ming-Fei picked up a rifle with movements that didn't feel like his own. He stood tall, eyes cold, and fired a flawless headshot at the enemy sniper. sniper. Without hesitation, he spun around and shot both Caesar and Chu Zihong, taking down 2 elite A-rank students as if he had been training for years. The entire battlefield went silent. Everyone stared in disbelief. Ming Fei trembled in horror, unable to comprehend how he had pulled off such impossible precision. Before panic could fully set in, alarms blared and medics rushed onto the field. Red Cross girls injected antidotes that brought all the dead students back instantly. Professor Manstein stormed in, enraged about the cost of reviving all the participants. Ming Fei nearly fainted again when Guderian, who'd been shot earlier, suddenly sat up. He casually explained that the bullets were sedatives mixed with fake blood. Then, for some reason, demonstrated by shooting himself again and collapsing onto the floor. Manstein threatened to report the chaos to the principal, but when the call connected, the principal laughed cheerfully, insisted the students continue enjoying themselves, and promised the school would cover all damages. Cheers broke out everywhere, as if this insanity was completely normal. Then, everything shifted when the principal asked to speak directly with Ming Fei. He greeted him warmly, making a joke about how impressive it was for an S rank to wipe out 2 A ranks on his first day. Ming Fei suddenly realized he had just become the biggest target on campus. Manstein quickly whispered that he should head straight to his dorm. People he embarrassed today would absolutely come for revenge. Meanwhile, far from the battlefield, the principal and a man named Mans discussed a grim operation. 8 years ago, a group of students had been massacred during a dragon incident. They needed a prodigy to lead the new era. Caesar and Chu were promising, but Mans proposed that Lu Ming Fei might be the unpredictable trump card they'd been waiting for. While the higher-ups planned missions in dangerous zones, such as sending Ya Sheng and Aki underwater to avoid awakening a sleeping dragon, Ming Fei was thrown into his new dorm life. His roommate turned out to be Finger von Frings, the freeloading disaster of a student known for failing nearly every class and surviving by borrowing money from everyone. Finger immediately informed Ming Fei that after his Liberty Day stunt, half the campus wanted to beat him up. Trying to act like a tour guide, Finger dragged Ming Fei around the enormous campus, bragging about the various departments and explaining Yanling, the unique personal power each hybrid possessed. He even mentioned that Professor Manstein's father used his Yanling to maintain a protective barrier around the entire school. Before Ming Fei could mock Finger's bragging, another student lost control of his own Yanling and summoned a giant water creature in the courtyard. A teacher quickly shut it down, but the sight triggered another vision for Ming Fei, this time a twisted, half-dead world tree. Finger called it the school's icon, the place where the Black Dragon Emperor had fallen long ago. Guderian eventually dragged Ming Fei back to the dorm and handed him an official student ID, warning him about the mandatory 3E test. Fail it once and you're expelled immediately. To help him prepare, Guderian brought out an ancient music box that contained the recorded roar of Nidhogg himself, the Imperium Yanling. For most students, hearing it triggered fear, hallucinations, or overwhelming pressure. Ming Fei listened for 5 seconds, then fell asleep, just knocked out, like someone had played a lullaby. No fear, no reaction, just sleep. Finger immediately uploaded the footage to the entire school network, announcing to everyone that the great S-rank prodigy had flopped against the Dragon Emperor's roar. Panic set in, and Ming Fei begged Finger for help. Naturally, Finger suggested cheating. Meanwhile, Guderian and Manstein were in the library freaking out. Their research suggested Ming Fei might descend from the White Dragon Emperor, the ancient rival who once challenged Nidhogg and lost. That bloodline was believed to be extinct, yet here Ming Fei was, falling asleep through dragon roars. Manstein wanted to dissect him, but Guderian refused unless the boy failed the exam. That night, a mysterious figure hacked the school AI, Norma, guaranteeing Ming Fei would pass no matter what. Test day arrived. Ming Fei walked in clutching Finger's cheat notes like a drowning man holding on to a life preserver. The exam administrators handed out blank sheets and informed them the dragon recording would trigger hallucinations, then simply walked out, leaving them alone with ancient monster audio. Ming Fei slipped into another vision. This time, the mysterious boy finally revealed his name, Lu Mingze, the same name as his obnoxious cousin. He told Mingfei that the visions came from the depths of his heart and promised to shoulder some of his burdens, speaking like a mix between a therapist and a demon. When Mingfei woke up, Nano informed him that he had slept through 2/3 of the test but still scribbled enough answers to pass. He had written 9 instead of 8, but she assured him it didn't matter. He passed. Back at the dorm, Finger congratulated him half-heartedly, officially welcoming him to real college life. Then he peeked at Mingfei's course selections and burst out laughing when he saw Mingfei had chosen Professor Monstein's alchemical mechanical design class. Finger didn't sugarcoat anything when he warned Mingfei about Professor Monstein's class. According to him, Manstein held the crown for being the most ruthless, soul-crushing instructor on campus, known for ripping students apart verbally until they regretted ever enrolling. But then Finger casually added that the class wasn't happening anyway, because Monstein had already ditched his responsibilities and sprinted off on some insane field mission to chase an ancient dragon. Meanwhile, miles away from the chaos of Cassell College, Professor Manstein, nicknamed Professor I'd rather break my spine than teach, was leading a deep-sea expedition into a drowned city. Ya Shang and Aki had suited up like budget versions of Aquaman and Ariel and were diving into gloomy, submerged ruins. Down in the shadows of the sunken world, Ya Shang activated his Void Snake Yanling, letting the spectral serpent swirl ahead to scout the structures. Everything was calm for a moment, until Manstein announced with zero warning that a magnitude 5 earthquake was incoming. Naturally, the one afternoon they decided to explore ruins on the ocean floor was the exact day the Earth wanted to rage quit. The tremors shattered their comms, leaving the group completely disconnected. Only through Ya Shang's Void Snake did they manage to re-establish a faint signal. Monstein updated the principal, explaining that the city might actually be the palace of a Dragon King, and to enter it they needed a key, and that key, unbelievably, was an infant with pure dragon blood, an actual baby. A terrified mother handed over her child, insisting this kid was their final chance. Manstein accepted the infant like he was accepting a live nuclear bomb, then immediately hurled himself back into the icy water with the dragon blood baby tucked against him like it was a high-stakes VIP escort mission. Upon reaching the bronze gates of the submerged city, he activated his Yanling, used the child as a mystical access code, and unlocked the ancient entrance. After giving his divers their instructions, Manstein returned to the ship while Ya Shang and Aki were left to explore the labyrinth as Norma scanned the layout from above. Inside the ruins, Ya Shang became increasingly concerned about the rapidly dropping oxygen levels. Manstein advised them to conserve every breath. The pair discovered a chamber with a massive bronze pillar carved with ancient markings. Feeling noble, Ya Shang told Aki to abandon him if conditions worsened. Aki, meanwhile, was stuck photographing statues from every angle for Norma's analysis. But then her heartbeat began spiking, dizziness crushed her vision, and she started blacking out. Ya Shang rushed to rescue her, revealing that he had found an incredibly heavy artifact, and even spotted something resembling a sleeping baby dragon nestled deeper inside the ruins. But disaster hit when one of the statues Aki had photographed suddenly moved. The thing stalked her like a creature awakening after centuries. Ya Shang fired at it, and the combination of her touch and the gunshot triggered the entire city's ancient security system. The maze twisted itself alive, paths shifting into a collapsing hellscape as the baby dragon awakened and activated full lockdown. The pair ran through falling stone corridors, desperately sprinting for the ship before the ruins swallowed them whole. Back at Cassell College, alarms blared through every hall, summoning all A-rank and above students. Right in the middle of the chaos, Mingfei slipped into yet another vision. The mysterious boy, the one who always appeared at moments of crisis, returned again, warning him of coming death and danger. But this time, he also dropped a cryptic cheat code for unlocking maps, talking like some cosmic game master. Finger yanked Mingfei back to reality, only to be immediately shooed away by Nano, who reminded him that his F-rank self wasn't invited. Finger sulked away like a child kicked off the playground. Inside the emergency hall, professors briefed the students on the crisis. Ya Shang and Aki were trapped deep in the ruins with only minutes of oxygen left, and the students had to decode ancient dragon text to save them. Caesar pointed out the obvious. Decoding dragon script normally took 15 years, not 20 minutes. Still, the professors dumped the task on them. While the elite students panicked over glyphs and translations, Ming Fei sat there lost. Norma, however, took pity and transformed his interface into something resembling a gaming HUD. Remembering the Dream Boy's cheat code, Ming Fei typed it in. Instantly, the entire map cracked open like a beginner puzzle. While everyone else struggled through academic hell, Ming Fei essentially used Ctrl+V on Fate and solved everything with a few keystrokes. The decoded map was transmitted to Ya Shang and Aki, pointing them to their only escape route, straight downward through the city's foundation. With barely 3 minutes of oxygen left, Ya Shang told Aki not to waste her remaining energy. She tried to confess her feelings for him, but he silenced her with a kiss and a melodramatic promise that they would survive together. It was basically an underwater romance anime scene. Meanwhile, Manstein realized they had miscalculated the oxygen reserve. They had only prepared enough to escape the ruins, not enough to resurface. He ordered lifeboats deployed and had the ship descend as low as possible to retrieve the pair. At Cassel, the entire student body anxiously waited for updates. Ming Fei, who had literally just saved an international mission by typing a cheat code, still looked miserable. His online buddy called to cheer him up, telling him to stay positive. Ironic advice considering Ming Fei had just carried an entire operation like an accidental hero. While Ming Fei awkwardly navigated campus life, Manstein's expedition took a horrifying turn. Aki burst out of the water at the rescue zone, clucking the artifact and gasping that Ya Shang had sacrificed himself to save her. The tragedy lasted all of 5 seconds before a monstrous dark silhouette lunged upward, grabbed Aki, and tore her back underwater, spraying blood across the surface like the opening kill of a horror movie. Then the attacker revealed itself, a massive, fully awakened water dragon. It surged toward the ship, and Manstein whipped out his rifle, firing round after round like a man possessed. The bullets bounced off harmlessly. The crew upgraded to missiles. The dragon swallowed them like snacks. Someone on board panicked that the warheads were still active inside the monster, and Manstein screamed for detonation. The ocean lit up with an enormous explosion, and for a brief moment, it looked like they had won. But dragons don't die that easily. The beast resurfaced, enraged, and speared Manstein's assistant straight through the body before dragging her under. Manstein snapped, firing wildly into the waves as the dragon circled them, making eerie, guttural noises. He translated for the crew. The dragon was mocking them. Worse, detonating more explosives could send the flames back at them. Just when the situation reached critical panic, someone spotted a dam in the distance. Manstein commanded full speed. They blasted toward the dam with the dragon chasing, jaws snapping at the hull. The crew managed to slide behind the dam gates and detonated the explosives at the perfect moment. The dragon was torn apart, but fate still wasn't done being cruel. A massive tooth rocketed through the air and impaled Manstein in an unbelievably unlucky death. Back at Cassel, students waited until the principal finally appeared on the broadcast. He announced the mission's success and gave special recognition to Ming Fei for cracking the map. The room erupted into applause, while Ming Fei looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Walking back to his dorm, Ming Fei was approached by Chu Ziheng. Calm, composed, and intimidating, Chu invited him to join Lionheart as his successor, but said he would respect Ming Fei's choice if he preferred the student union instead. Their conversation was cut short when bells tolled and white doves soared overhead, signaling morning. Word spread quickly, Manstein was dead. In his final moments, he had refused medical treatment, calling it pointless, and told the principal to tell students he'd gone on a mission instead of dying. He requested one last thing: find Nano a proper mentor. The dragon relic they retrieved was transported to the college for investigation. Meanwhile, Ming Fei received an email invitation to Caesar's grand dance party. Confused, he asked Finger who Caesar really was. Finger explained that Caesar Gattuso wasn't just a top student. He was the golden heir of a hyper-wealthy family, carrying more expectations than an entire dynasty. Ming-Fei wanted to avoid the party, complaining he didn't own a suit or have the ability to dance without looking like a clown. Finger insisted anyway. His brilliant solution? Borrow costumes from the drama club. At the ball, the difference in class was brutal. The event was a perfect fairy tale: rose petals, candlelight, classical music, and Caesar greeting Nano like royalty. He even announced the entire ball was to celebrate her birthday. Guests lined up to wish her well, while Ming-Fei and Finger stood near the wall like background NPCs. Finger somehow blended in with his dancing, but Ming-Fei turned the floor into a slapstick performance, stumbling like his legs had input lag. Nano subtly asked Caesar not to pressure Ming-Fei too hard. Caesar smirked, saying he had his own strategy. Mid-dance, he silenced the hall with a speech about loyalty and greatness, stirring the crowd into chanting his name. Then he called Ming-Fei out publicly, inviting him to choose the student union. Ming-Fei panicked and asked for time. Caesar instead pushed him to pick a song and dance. That's when the blonde violinist from the 3E test stepped up. She quietly put aside her violin, held out her hand, and guided him onto the floor. For the first time, someone helped him move confidently instead of tripping over himself. She coached him gently through each step, turning his awkward stumbles into something remotely graceful. When they finished, the crowd actually applauded, giving Ming-Fei his very first moment of dignity. Breathless and overwhelmed, Ming-Fei stepped outside for air. Nano spotted him, waved him over with a faint smile, and he softly wished her a happy birthday. She admitted she was tired of the partying and casually asked if he could drive her up the mountain for some quiet. Lu Ming-Fei agreed without hesitation, desperate to impress her, and for a moment the fairy tale of the ball returned, until Norma cut the music dead with the worst possible announcement: Cassell College was under attack. 13 outsiders had slipped past the outer defenses, and their target was the Dragonvase housed in Alfheim Institute. With staff tied up, the professors had no choice but to shove students straight into the inferno. Orders flew. Caesar Gattuso and Chu Zihong were assigned to hold the line, while everyone else armed up with frigate rounds and braced for a bloodbath. As the campus transformed into a war zone, Ming-Fei slipped mid-drive into a trance, behind the wheel on a narrow mountain pass with Nano beside him, the last place you'd want to black out. The Dream Boy appeared again, whispering riddles and taunting him about Nano's invitation. Did it mean she liked him? Ming-Fei panicked, sputtering that Nano was out of his league and obviously tied to Caesar. The boy laughed, revealing the harsh truth that Nano didn't love anyone, and then, because he couldn't resist, fed Ming-Fei another cryptic cheat code: show me the flowers. Back on campus, the situation degraded fast. After the initial skirmishes, only 6 invaders remained, but their captain was relentless. Her objective plain and single-minded: seize the Dragon Vase. Manstein prepared to unleash his Void Snake Yonling to track and intercept, but Cassell's barrier blocked him. He phoned his father, who, Father of the Year, nonchalantly agreed to drop the shield as an early birthday favor. With the barrier down, the invader captain activated her Shadowfield Yonling, and her squad crept invisibly across the grounds towards Caesar's stronghold at Valhalla. On the mountain, Ming-Fei and Nano sat by a cold pond, and the tone shifted heavy. When Ming-Fei offered condolences for Ya Shang and Aki, Nano admitted she'd already accepted their deaths, then confessed something darker. The Manstein story was a lie. He hadn't simply gone on a mission. She revealed that he had warned her it would be a sign of his death, and that if she herself ever died, she wanted the school to say she'd left for Iceland so people could move on. She spoke of an old folk tale, fireflies guiding lost souls up waterfalls to their home, and Ming-Fei sat there, that same dumb, silent idiot, not fully registering the grief she was naming. Meanwhile, inside the college, intruder number 13 slipped into the abandoned wine cellar through a chimney, used a master keycard to pry open a secret door, and started creeping toward Alfheim. Caesar, standing sentinel at Valhalla, switched on his Kamitachi Yanling and detected invisible presences. Ever a showman, he taunted Chu Zihong with a challenge to see which of them could finish their enemies first. Chu dismissed the bravado, but Norma ordered the library, where Chu's assistant was stationed, evacuated, leaving Zihong alone in a trap. At Valhalla, the intruder intruder's stealth broke when the squad leader's phone rang. She was Sakatku Mai, Aki's younger sister. Caesar offered hollow sympathy. She spat back that she didn't care for Aki's choices, then theatrically started a musical countdown. Caesar, unimpressed, shredded her squad before the final beat, but Mai grinned as she revealed her ploy. She'd been bait. Her main strike had been elsewhere, a stoic, deadpan girl sent into the library to confront Chu Zihong directly. Their true goal was to topple the campus's two mightiest players. In the library, Chu met the girl face to face. Professors watching tensed when they noticed she bore no weapon, either a sign of utter weakness or proof she was so powerful she didn't need one. Guderian reminded them that Zihong's Yanling was classified. When Zihong finally activated his royal blaze, the room erupted in inferno. Books, wood, and plaster smoked as though he detonated a miniature sun. The deadpan girl did not flinch. She mirrored the exact same royal blaze, and suddenly Zihong wasn't facing a weakling. He was staring at a reflection of his own devastating power. Meanwhile, Intruder 13 blundered into the restricted tunnels and stumbled onto a dormant AI node, Eva, who informed him the underwater corridor hadn't been used in 35 years. He had clearance, so Eva could do nothing to stop him. Elated when his employer doubled the payout to 5 million, he celebrated like an idiot, then slipped into a reservoir, lost his phone, and missed the last set of instructions. Still drawn forward by a whispering voice murmuring "brother" through the water, he kept going. On the mountain, Nano apologized for Caesar's rough tactics. He pressured everyone to fit S-rank expectations, and then dropped a bombshell. She had been the one to invite Mingfei to the ball, not Caesar. She teased him about the dance with Zero, then, casually, asked whether he might consider joining the student union. To calm his paranoia about being a pawn, Nano confessed she genuinely wanted to look after him like a little brother, and that her engagement to Caesar was a political arrangement between families. When Mingfei asked why she hadn't helped him during his disastrous dance, she said Caesar stopped her. Then she flipped it, joking that if he wanted to protect her, he should buy her presents. Their mood shifted when Mingfei remembered the cheat line and whispered, "Show me the flowers." At that cue, the car's stereo exploded into fireworks over the ridge that spelled "Happy Birthday, Nano." She broke down. Those annual presents had always come from her late mother, and Mingfei, at last more than a punchline, vowed to be her brother forever. She hugged him, promising protection, and for a fleeting instant, Mingfei was more than a clown. He had timing and a cause. Deep below the waves, Intruder 13 was swept into an underwater research vault where researchers had gathered around the dragon vase preserved in liquid nitrogen, guarding it like a relic. The principal had already forbidden invasive study. Manstein had warned them not to play with mercury, but curiosity and hubris won. MRI scans showed 2 embryonic cavities inside the relic, one mysteriously empty, and a scientist's insistence on opening it nearly triggered catastrophe, until the principal, furious, threatened him with a knife and forced an evacuation. Number 13 slipped in afterward, attempted to steal the vase, and immediately began hallucinating, a woman's voice whispering "brother" in his ear. Panicked, he fled and dropped a small bottle from his pocket. He had no idea those vials were actually the final instructions. Pour the solution on the vase and extract its secret. A hooded stranger found the bottle, poured the strange liquid over the relic, added his own blood, and chanted an oath that linked the dragon's essence to Nidhogg. Energy erupted through the chamber, and the air tasted like lightning. Back in the church, Caesar dueled Sakatku Mai in a brutal contest. He played the aristocrat, offering a challenge: land 3 clean hits and she'd win. Her first trick failed against Kamitachi. Her second, a hairpin clone, was shredded on impact. The third, more elaborate, fizzled against his defense, so she broke the rules, drawing a gun. Before she could fire, a distant child's whisper triggered an explosion that rocked the sanctuary. Chaos swallowed the duel, and Caesar, ever cocky, declared a tie. At the blasted crime scene, melted footprints scarred the floor, and a perfect hole burned clean through a wall. Mai smirked that the temperature matched the sun's, and Caesar, normally unshakable, felt at a loss. His Kamitachi hadn't detected the intruder because there was no heartbeat to sense. They weren't fighting a human at all. On the mountain, Mingfei freaked when the car's engine roared as if possessed. Nano brushed it off and urged a quick return to campus. She checked Caesar's voicemail and learned the invasion alert had gone out. Mingfei teetered on tears, but Nano insisted Caesar and Shu had matters under control. Spoiler, they were only just holding. At the college, professors watched Zihong and the deadpan girl clash like titans. Her control suggested she wasn't trying to win so much as waste time. In the tunnels, Intruder 13 attempted an escape on a bicycle, a farcical plan, and Guderian ordered open fire. Somehow, the man dodged every round until fate intervened and Mingfei's car collided with him. When the intruder pulled a knife, both froze. It wasn't a stranger at all, but old Tang, a childhood friend of Mingfei's. They staged a fake hostage ploy so Tang could flee, but then a boy wrapped in flames landed on their bonnet, carrying a glowing shield and howling, "Brother!" as if a family reunion had exploded into being. Mingfei slammed the accelerator, trying to escape with the burning child's reflection flickering in the rear view. As professors shouted orders to keep the fiery boy at a distance, bullets melted and grenades fizzled against whatever shield he carried. Constantine didn't calm down at all. If anything, every hit only pushed him further into rage. The moment he lost control, the child detonated with royal blaze, releasing an explosive wave so strong it instantly ended the fight between Xu Ziheng and the emotionless girl. Both stopped mid-clash, realizing immediately that continuing their duel was pointless when this unstable dragon child was the real threat. The silent girl admitted quickly that the boy had been released by mistake, and surprisingly, Zihong accepted her explanation and shifted his focus instead of questioning her further. Professor Manstein, already desperate, called his father again to reactivate the protective barrier, but the response was far worse than expected. His father bluntly told him the barrier wouldn't change anything. This wasn't a normal intruder. The boy was a first-generation hybrid dragon, known as the Dragon King of Bronze and Fire, which meant that nothing short of high-level intervention could restrain him. The situation had already crossed into disaster territory. Elsewhere, Sakatku Mai was updating her employer about the situation. The second she described the child, energy shield, furnace-like body, complete immunity to metal, the woman on the other end sounded stunned. After watching the footage, she confirmed the boy wasn't Norton, the Dragon King they feared, but his younger brother, Constantine. What worried her even more was that she genuinely didn't know how he had been released from the vase in the first place. While everyone scrambled, Constantine wandered across the school grounds like a lost child, shouting for his brother. With every step he took, the air distorted from the heat radiating off him. Meanwhile, Mingfei, Nano, and Old Tong crouched behind stone pillars, trying to come up with a plan. Tong admitted his hunting job wasn't actually hunting creatures. His organization chased ancient relics and artifacts. He also confessed he had joined the group through an online recruitment thread without even knowing the mission involved the vase from Mingfei's school. Once they examined the cracked vase photo more carefully, they all realized Constantine must have crawled out from inside it. Their attempt to stay hidden didn't last long. Finger stumbled across them, screamed, and almost immediately exposed their location in classic Finger fashion. Constantine shifted toward the noise, forcing Mingfei, Nano, and Tang to sprint across the courtyard. They were stopped mid-run when Caesar and Mai appeared in their path. Caesar instantly checked on Nano, telling her in a serious tone to move to the swimming pool and hide. She tried to argue, but eventually agreed. Mai stood her ground, determined to keep protecting her squad no matter what happened. At that moment, Mai's employer relayed the first useful piece of intel all night. Non-metal fridge bullets could stagger Constantine. They wouldn't kill him, but they were the only rounds capable of slowing him down. Caesar and Mai switched ammo immediately, updated the professors, and started unloading at Constantine. Their shots visibly pushed him back, and once the guards and students realized it worked, everyone joined in, forcing Constantine into retreat step by step. Meanwhile, Mingfei, Old Tang, and Finger somehow drifted into fooling around in the pool, as if they forgot a dragon child was still on the loose. But the instant they heard footsteps approaching the area, the three of them submerged themselves underwater to hide. Mingfei, however, was pulled into another one of his visions. The pool turned dark red, steam rising as if it was boiling. He dragged himself toward the shore in the vision, and there stood Constantine, staring right at him. Mingfei felt an odd sense of familiarity the moment their eyes met. The boy sniffed him as if trying to confirm something, waves of heat pouring from his skin. Suddenly, the scenery shifted again, revealing pyramids and fire, the Bronze City. reality. Mingfei realized he wasn't imagining things. He was seeing the true consciousness of Constantine. Right as Constantine stepped forward, Lu Mingze appeared, kicked Constantine away, and bluntly told him to get lost. Mingfei jolted awake in the real world, gasping beside the pool with no one else around. At that moment, the principal arrived and pulled Mingfei to the watchtower. He explained the situation clearly. Constantine was cornered, but destroying a Dragon King wasn't simple. To give him a chance, the principal handed Mingfei a special alchemic bullet, the only type capable of breaking through Constantine's core. He then demonstrated his Yanling ×0, which slowed the world around him. This would give Mingfei a precise moment to target Constantine's weak point, his shifting eye. He encouraged Mingfei to stay focused, then left to prepare the battlefield. Nearby, old Tang was growing increasingly uneasy. Finger mocked him for almost abandoning them in the pool, and Tang admitted he had also heard the mysterious brother voice earlier. Before either could comment further, Constantine suddenly transformed into his full dragon form, the final and most dangerous stage. The principal stepped in front of the students, thanked them for holding the line, activated ×0, and shattered Constantine's fiery barrier, exposing the weak point. Mingfei only needed to shoot, but he froze, paralyzed by fear. Lu Mingze appeared next to him again, grabbed his arm, and guided his aim. Together, they pulled the trigger. The hit landed. The principal shouted for everyone to empty their ammo. Rounds poured into Constantine, but instead of retaliating, Constantine curled his body around Old Tang, shielding him. With his last breath, he whispered, "Brother," and collapsed. Tang fled in shock. Then, the memories hit him. Constantine, their shared oath, their bond, their dream to rule together. Tang finally remembered the truth. He wasn't just Tang, he was Norton, Constantine's twin and the Dragon King of Bronze. Rage and grief consumed him, and Norton's true form awakened. The following day, the principal met with Manstein's father to discuss the aftermath. Manstein's father questioned why Norton hadn't been killed immediately. The principal explained the reality of dragons. Nothing could kill them permanently. Even one remaining piece of their body could regenerate the entire dragon. This was why sealing existed. He also revealed that his own hybrid bloodline had extended his life for over a century. His mission wasn't just stopping Dragon Kings, it was eliminating all 4 kings and Nidhogg itself. Norton's awakening was only another obstacle in a larger plan, regardless of collateral damage. Meanwhile, Mingfei and Finger struggled to process the entire disaster. Finger mentioned that executive members were returning, security was being reinforced, and even shared some history about the secret parties on campus. When Mingfei admitted he joined the student union because of Nano, Finger smugly said he had already joined earlier. Their conversation ended when an irritated staff member delivered Mingfei's new student union ID. Nano had already arranged it beforehand. Caesar summoned Mingfei to his office an hour later. Before that, Caesar met with the principal and received the next mission briefing, a return expedition to the Bronze City, and Mingfei was specifically required. Caesar agreed without hesitation. Mingfei was dragged into Caesar's office shortly after. Hearing that survival chances were extremely low, Mingfei tried every excuse: sickness, fear, fake injuries, but Caesar rejected every attempt. Only 2 freshmen had been chosen for this mission, Mingfei and Zero, who had already accepted without hesitation. Caesar grew annoyed when Mingfei continued resisting, and even threatened to revoke Mingfei's student union ID if he refused. Nano stepped in and promised she would personally look after Mingfei as his senior. With no other options, Mingfei reluctantly agreed. Caesar ended the meeting by telling him they had 2 months of training ahead. Those 2 months were brutal. Mingfei went from lazy and untrained to a barely competent trainee. He was forced through diving drills, martial arts sessions, endurance workouts, reaction training, weapon practice, everything they could cram into the schedule. By the time the mission day arrived, Mingfei wasn't any braver, only more nervous. He sat in his diving gear, sweating like he was about to take an exam he wasn't prepared for. Finger tried to motivate him, but ended up gossiping instead, mentioning that romantic partners couldn't dive together, explaining why Yashang and Aki had hidden their relationship earlier. That meant Caesar and Nano couldn't dive together either. Panic hit Ming-Fei hard. Thinking he might not return, he handed Finger his credit card and told him to enjoy his money if he died. Finger immediately started ordering food and snacks like he was at a buffet until Ming-Fei nearly fainted from stress. Surprisingly, Finger gave the card back and told him he would make it out alive. That small moment gave Ming-Fei just enough courage to continue toward the mission. Meanwhile, Norton summoned one of his subordinate dragons in preparation for the coming confrontation. Operation Bronze officially kicked off with Ming-Fei, Nono, Caesar, and Zero stepping aboard the ship, where Professor Manstein greeted them like he was introducing a theme park ride instead of a life-or-death mission. He proudly flaunted every piece of equipment they'd brought: torpedoes, reinforced hull plating, and a brand new Dragon Killer missile, like he'd personally built all of it in his garage. Their assignment wasn't complicated: infiltrate the Bronze City and destroy the entire place before Norton finished his cocoon transformation. Ming-Fei, in full clueless mode, asked why they didn't simply research the city. Manstein stared at him like he'd just asked why fire was hot, then spelled it out slowly. Lifting an entire submerged city from the ocean floor was impossible, and leaving Norton to awaken inside it was suicide, so the only plan that made sense was blowing it to pieces. Next came the diving pairings. Caesar and Zero were meant to go down together, while Ming-Fei partnered with Nono. But then Zero suddenly declared she couldn't dive because she was on her period. Ming-Fei, completely missing the context, questioned why it mattered, but Zero didn't budge. Just like that, Ming-Fei was stuck diving with Nono, which he wasn't thrilled about for purely survival reasons. Before hopping into the water, Nono explained the consciousness line system, the mechanical tether designed to pull them back if they fainted. Ming-Fei immediately asked what they'd do if a dragon appeared underwater. Manstein reassured him that dragons were dormant, and even Norton wouldn't be active until the cocooning process finished. So relax, he said, though knowing the series, that was jinxing it. They dove in. Reaching the Bronze Gate, Ming-Fei followed instructions and dripped blood into the opening. Instead of gracefully accepting him, the gate chomped down on his hand like it wanted a snack. He screamed through the water until it released him. Nono inspected the wound calmly, pointed out that it was barely a cut, and told him to stop acting like he was losing an arm. Despite this, Ming-Fei wrapped his hand like he'd been mauled. With a groaning rumble, the gate opened, and a violent underwater current sucked them inside the reawakened Bronze City. Nono briefly blacked out, but came to in a hallway with Ming-Fei hovering anxiously beside her. She immediately checked in with Norma, who confirmed the air was breathable. To conserve oxygen, she told Ming-Fei to ditch his gear. Reporting in, they learned Norton's awakening had rebooted ancient systems in the city. When they asked where to plant the explosives, Manstein told them the charge must be placed inside the Dragon King's palace, the true heart of the city. To find their way, he told Ming-Fei to release a dye packet and follow its trail through the water. As they traveled deeper into the labyrinth, Ming-Fei complained non-stop about every eerie statue they passed. Nono finally snapped and called him out for being a coward. To distract him, she explained the grim story behind the statues. Long ago, a tribe had marched into the city bearing offerings, food, animals, and even a beautiful maiden to earn Norton's blessing. He never appeared. Their efforts ended in tragedy, and their bloodline died out. The dye trail eventually stopped at a massive bronze pillar, the same location Ya Shang and Aki had reached earlier. Ming-Fei, looking for a shortcut, suggested placing the bomb right there and returning home alive. Nono shot that idea down instantly. Something about the surroundings told her this wasn't the actual palace. Before Ming-Fei could respond, she told him to put his oxygen mask back on, then shoved him straight into the water. No hesitation. When Manstein asked for an update, Nono lied about their visibility being poor to avoid questioning. Then a sudden surge dragged them into another section of the city, where they found countless skeletons, fallen warriors who had once attempted to challenge Norton. It was a quiet, eerie reminder of what they were up against. Nono grabbed Ming-Fei's hand and used his bleeding palm to activate a hidden mechanism beneath them. A gate opened, but in the process, they lost connection to the consciousness line. Ming-Fei spiraled into panic, but Nono remained calm, saying they'd reconnect later if they survived. Inside a rundown stone house, Nono slipped into a trance triggered by the lingering memories. She revealed that this small home was the original residence of Norton and Constantine, their earliest palace before becoming Dragon Kings. Ming Fei listened carefully, genuinely impressed by her insight. After setting the timer for 45 minutes, they turned to leave, only to notice a lamp still burning. Someone, very likely Norton, was present. They bolted from the room and immediately realized their consciousness line had been stolen. On top of that, the city had begun collapsing. They sprinted toward another exit and at the final gate shared a moment of honesty. Ming Fei admitted he didn't leave any farewell message because he fully expected to return alive. No confessed she didn't leave one either, not because she was confident, but because she believed no one would miss her. Ming Fei brought up Caesar, but she brushed it off, saying he'd move on easily. Ming Fei reopened his cut to activate the gate with his blood. Back on the ship, Manstein assumed they were dead. Caesar demanded to dive and rescue them, but Manstein reminded him the mission's priority wasn't romance. It was preventing a Dragon King from waking. Underground, No and Ming Fei hit a dead end, and No admitted that only a miracle could save them. Ming Fei remembered Lu Mingzhe's cheat code, activated it, and to his surprise, Lu Mingzhe answered. Then, out of nowhere, Finger's voice also joined the call because Lu Mingzhe had dragged him into the psychic link. Ming Fei begged Finger to pull up the Bronze City map, but topside chaos erupted immediately. Manstein grabbed his head in pain. The psychic system was using his brain as a relay. Finger struggled to navigate the interface because of his low clearance, and Caesar nearly strangled him as Manstein's brain fried. Then, salvation arrived. Eva, one of Norma's AI personalities, unlocked full system access. Finger finally tore through the map at high speed, plotting a route for Ming Fei and No. Above, the situation worsened. Zero detected the water temperature rising, classic dragon weather shift. Manstein collapsed from the psychic overload, leaving Caesar in charge. Caesar instantly snapped into commander mode, barking orders like he'd been waiting for this moment. Their control didn't last. A dragon slammed into the lower deck, destroying the torpedo bay. For a second, everyone thought Norton had arrived early, but sonar showed nothing. Zero, watching through her scope, identified the creature, Samson, Norton's loyal servant dragon, circling the ship like a hunting shark. Just as Samson prepared to attack, he suddenly abandoned the chase. Norton appeared on a distant cliff. Instead of greeting him, Norton thanked Samson and killed him outright. Zero froze in disbelief. Moments later, a massive explosion of energy filled the sea. Norton had merged with Samson's remains, a grotesque shortcut that skipped the entire cocooning stage. Zero realized the truth instantly. Norton had accelerated his evolution. They had less time and a stronger enemy. Orders were clear. Norton had to die, but protecting Lu Mingfei remained the highest priority. Meanwhile, deep inside the submerged Bronze City, No and Mingfei were sprinting through twisting corridors with fingers-mapped directions flashing across their wrist displays. Their relief vanished the moment they turned a corner and saw Yashang's body lying motionless on the ground, still holding the book he had been carrying for the research team. He had clearly given up his oxygen mask earlier to save Aki. Mingfei wanted to rush past the scene before panic swallowed him again, but No gently stopped him. She whispered a soft farewell to Yashang, paying her respects before dragging Mingfei forward again. The path ahead felt endless, every hallway looking identical, and Mingfei's mental composure finally cracked. He confessed he didn't believe he would ever see the surface again, that he was sure this would be his grave. No, normally composed, began doubting Finger's calculations as well. The tension between them built until they could barely think straight. Right then, Mingfei's subconscious punched its way into the front of his mind. He suddenly found himself standing before a harsher, crueler version of himself. This inner Mingfei wasted no time roasting him, calling him pathetic for always waiting to be rescued instead of fighting for his own life. He delivered the bluntest motivational speech possible. Get it together or die here like a coward. Oddly enough, the insult worked. Mingfei felt something ignite inside him, a refusal to collapse again. They finally reached the last barrier, a massive gate that needed dragon blood to unlock. Mingfei tried to cut his palm with the knife, but he fumbled miserably. The moment the gate sensed incorrect entry, a giant stone slab above them began to descend, threatening to crush them on the spot. No braced herself under the crushing weight, muscles trembling as she pushed against it. She screamed at Mingfei to hurry. Panicking, Mingfei ditched the knife, tore off off his gas mask and bit into his own finger like an animal. The blood finally hit the trigger. The gate burst open, and the water suction yanked them both through, knocking Ming-Fei unconscious instantly. Back on the ship, Manstein, barely conscious after being fried by psychic strain, managed to mutter a final warning that Ming-Fei and Nono were running out of oxygen. Caesar ignored the professor's rambling and instead took over the operation, ordering the crew to move the ship while Norton's fused form pursued them through the water. With time rapidly running out, the emergency rescue bell was deployed, hoping Ming-Fei and Nono could spot it before Norton did. Underwater, Ming-Fei was barely clinging to life. His subconscious tormented him with visions of people he knew mocking and scolding him for being useless. Right when he was about to mentally check out, Nono delivered the most intense underwater CPR imaginable, a brutal slap across his face. He snapped awake to Nono yelling at him. She reminded him that when he bit his finger earlier, he had ripped off his oxygen mask and now had no air supply, leaving them dependent on her half-empty tank. In short, they were on borrowed time. Just as Ming-Fei was spiraling toward panic again, luck finally threw them a lifeline. A helicopter buzzed overhead, and Chu Ziheng's voice came through the radio, informing Caesar's team that backup had arrived. The crew relaxed for a moment, but Ming-Fei practically burst into tears from relief. Then Nono did something reckless and selfless. She removed her diving suit and forced it onto Ming-Fei, telling him she would be fine using only her natural diving skills. Ming-Fei didn't know if he should thank her or beg her to stop. Before he could respond, the water around them exploded with blasts that released airborne poison. The mission instantly shifted into an even deadlier stage. Above them, Caesar and the others were struggling to survive against Norton's fused form. When Chu Ziheng arrived with air support, Caesar looked irritated rather than relieved, like someone had swapped his gourmet steak with hospital salad. Zero immediately called him out, reminding him that any extra hands were better than none. Caesar only replied that fire powers against Norton were pointless. Chu Ziheng's royal blaze would barely scratch Norton's inferno-tier flames. The situation worsened when the pilot announced the engines were dying and the aircraft couldn't stay airborne. Their only hope was that the watertight compartments kept the ship from sinking. But Caesar wasn't about to give up yet. After learning they still had torpedoes, he devised a risky but possible strategy. They'd need to close within 100 meters of Norton, way too close for comfort. But the torpedoes would strike with airplane-like force, something Norton might not tank easily. Caesar insisted on acting as the distraction, while Zero prepared the torpedo. Zero warned him that launching the torpedo at such close range would sound like a rocket firing directly next to him. His enhanced senses would mean instant ruptured eardrums. Caesar simply smirked and tied a blindfold over his eyes, tuning his hearing to focus purely on sound. The battle began. Caesar unloaded rifle shots at Norton, even though every bullet melted before reaching the target. But the goal wasn't damage, it was provocation. As planned, Norton's attention zeroed in on Caesar. Chu Ziheng fired his royal blaze to add pressure, but Norton countered with flames twice as intense, resulting in an explosion that blinded everyone except Caesar. That was the moment he had been waiting for. He ripped off the blindfold and shouted the order for Zero to launch. The torpedo blasted forward like a metal comet. In his adrenaline high, Caesar forgot to cover his ears. The noise shattered his hearing instantly, but the torpedo drilled into Norton's chest, forcing the Dragon King to roar and collapse into the water. Chu Ziheng announced that his helicopter was too damaged to continue, so he retreated. For a moment, it looked like they had achieved the impossible. Norton was down, but victory came at a cost. Caesar's ears were pouring blood, and Zero had to sign to communicate. In that rare moment, Caesar signed back fluently. He revealed that he learned sign language because his mother was deaf. Zero admitted she learned it to avoid feeling isolated. They exchanged a quiet high five, united in pain, exhaustion, and mutual respect. Even as they celebrated surviving Norton for the moment, their thoughts drifted back to Ming-Fei and Nono, still somewhere in the collapsing Bronze City. Against all odds, Ming-Fei and Nono finally spotted the rescue bell through the murky water. Nono, who had been holding her breath like she trained for the Olympics, tapped Ming-Fei and motioned for him to take the respirator. He inhaled the oxygen like it was the sweetest thing he'd tasted in his entire entire miserable life. Relief washed across his face, and for the first time since the nightmare began, he dared to believe they might actually make it out alive. But just when it seemed like fate was finally giving them a break, the universe flipped them off again. Nono calmly pressed her fingerprint against the diving bell's panel to activate the seal, then shoved Mingfei inside like he was precious cargo she was responsible for delivering. Before she could step in beside him, the nightmare returned. Norton, who everyone assumed had been taken down, rose out of the water like a horror villain returning for a final act and impaled her in one swift strike. Mingfei froze, his whole body locked up like an NPC that had just been hit with a glitch. The girl who had carried him, protected him, and dragged him through every life-or-death moment was suddenly bleeding before his eyes. And instead of crying or panicking, Nono summoned the last bit of strength in her battered body to slam the diving bell door shut, trapping Mingfei inside and guaranteeing he'd survive, even if she didn't. Inside the sealed chamber, Mingfei completely broke. Every moment she'd shielded him, every scolding, every time she dragged him away from death, replayed in his mind like a cruel highlight reel. It hit him that he wasn't just losing a teammate, he was losing the only person who made him feel like he wasn't a useless burden. His sobs filled the tiny space as he watched Nono collapse outside the bell, dying right in front of him. Just when his grief drowned him, he fell into another vision. He found himself drifting on a small raft through a strange dreamscape, mist swirling around him, and standing on the raft, as if he'd been waiting there the whole time, was Lu Mingzhe, his unsettling cousin demon brother hybrid, appearing because Mingfei's heartbreak had practically summoned him. At first, Mingzhe seemed ready to leave him there, telling him to get himself together, but when he hinted that there might be a way to save Nono, Mingfei snapped to attention like a starving dog hearing food hit the bowl. Before offering anything, Mingzhe asked why he even chose Cassell College to begin with. Mingfei's heart finally cracked open. He admitted he had spent his whole life pretending to have potential, pretending to have a future, and that all he ever wanted was for his parents to look at him with pride. He confessed that he'd always leaned on others, that he had never stood on his own 2 feet. And when it came to Nono, he admitted she meant everything. She was the one pulling him forward when he couldn't move by himself. Mingzhe didn't sugarcoat anything. He said Nono's support came from pity for someone who reminded her of her own failures. That shattered Mingfei further. Through tears, he begged Mingzhe to save her, promising he'd do anything. Finally, Mingzhe told him the truth. He could save Nono and give Mingfei the power needed to face Norton, but the price was brutal. Every time Mingfei used one of Mingzhe's powers, he'd lose 1/4 of his lifetime, 4 uses, and his soul belonged to Mingzhe permanently. Mingfei didn't hesitate for even a heartbeat. To save Nono, he signed away his soul without a single question. Even Mingzhe was surprised at how fast he agreed, laughing that love had turned him into the perfect fool. Back in reality, Mingfei's eyes snapped open. New Yanling power roared through his body, sharper, faster, and far more dangerous. He immediately moved to save Nono. With his enhanced power, he healed her wounds enough to stabilize her, secured an oxygen mask over her face, strapped her into the diving bell, and launched it upward toward the surface. Above the water, Caesar's team spotted the rising bell and rushed to haul it aboard. Medics immediately took over. Nono had barely survived, but Mingfei had already sold a chunk of his soul to make it happen. With Nono safe, Mingzhe mentally reappeared and prepared Mingfei for the real fight ahead. Mingfei doubted if the new power would be enough, but Mingzhe revealed something vital. The box recovered from Yashang's body, the one Mingfei had nearly forgotten about, was no ordinary item. It contained 7 ancient tools crafted by Norton himself, weapons capable of killing even their creator. Before Mingfei could choose, Mingzhe gave him one more warning. To stand a chance, he had to silence Norton first. If Norton couldn't speak, he couldn't invoke his strongest Yanling. Mingfei summoned the ancient metal box. It glowed ominously as it opened. From the arsenal of 7 deadly choices, he grabbed 2, one with a purple sheen and one glowing yellow. Mingzhe sighed, stating Mingfei somehow managed to pick the weakest pair of the bunch. But at this point, it didn't matter. These were the weapons that would decide whether he lived long enough to see see No-No again. Fueled by grief, anger, and borrowed power, Ming-Fei launched himself at Norton. The second he charged, the weapons shifted, revealing their real forms. His first attack slashed across Norton's mouth, drawing actual pain from the Dragon King. For a brief moment, Ming-Fei actually looked like he knew what he was doing. But underwater combat wasn't kind to amateurs. His balance vanished, his movements turned sloppy, and Norton barely seemed phased. Just when it looked like Ming-Fei was going to get himself killed, Ming-Ze stepped in again like a gamer toggling settings, activating movement enhancements and stabilizing Ming-Fei's footing. Suddenly, Ming-Fei's movements sharpened. He wasn't flailing anymore, he was fighting. The underwater battle escalated into chaos, a mortal wielding Norton's own ancient weapons against him. On the ship, the crew went pale. The entire vessel shook as they realized Norton wasn't dead. He was fighting Ming-Fei, and the impact alone was shaking the ocean around them. Norton pulled back into deeper waters, regrouping. Ming-Fei hovered where he was, feeling despair creep in again. He wondered who would even care if he died here besides No-No. That's when Ming-Ze yanked him back into the dream realm again. He told him something he needed to hear. Dragons don't tire. If Ming-Fei wanted even a sliver of a chance, he needed to finish the fight right now. Ming-Ze then dropped the final revelation. The silencing spell that kept Norton from using Yanling techniques was fading fast. Once it vanished, Norton's power would surge beyond control, and his only remaining weak spot was the humanoid form sitting atop the dragon's head. Fueled by that knowledge, Ming-Fei activated his Yanling. His senses exploded, blinding and overwhelming at first, until Ming-Ze merged his own perception with his, giving him clarity. With enhanced precision, Ming-Fei finally locked onto Norton's true position.
Ming-Fei's blade tore into the dragon's titanic body with everything he had left. The strike cut deep, but not deep enough. So he shifted his target upward, aiming for the humanoid figure anchored on top of the dragon's skull, the true weak point. He lunged in for a final, decisive blow, and then stopped cold. Because it wasn't just Norton sitting there. It was Old Tang, the same Old Tang who had shared meals with him, joked with him, survived classes with him. The same friend who had treated him like an actual human being back when most of Cassell College had written him off as a walking failure. Ming-Fei's entire mind short-circuited. 1 second of hesitation, 1 second of doubt, and that single second was all Norton needed. The Dragon King shot forward with terrifying speed, massive claws closing around Ming-Fei's throat. He squeezed, crushing the air out of him. Ming-Fei kicked helplessly, fingers clawing at Norton's grip as the weight of his mistake hit him. Same old Ming-Fei, hesitating exactly when he couldn't afford to. Ming-Ze materialized in his mind again, expression ice cold, clearly done with Ming-Fei's sentimentality. Without a word, he shoved a dagger into Ming-Fei's spiritual hand, the blade humming with destructive energy. With his vision blackening and no other way out, Ming-Fei drove the dagger straight into Norton's humanoid form. The effect was instant. Norton's movements slowed, his limbs stiffening. A stone-like shell spread across his body as the Dragon King began petrifying from the inside out. Ming-Fei floated upward, gasping as Norton's grip loosened, but he didn't feel relief, only heartbreak. Tears streamed down his face as memories of Old Tang flooded him. Every joke, every argument, every moment they'd shared, now twisted by the brutal truth that he had killed someone he once called brother.
Back on the ship, attention shifted to No-No. Medics worked frantically as Caesar, Zero, and the others hovered nearby. When the doctor finally confirmed that her vital signs were stable, the entire crew exhaled at once. Zero quietly wiped her eyes. Caesar looked like a proud parent whose kid just won first place at life. For a moment, joy drowned out the chaos around them. But Zero was the first to notice something wrong. Ming-Fei wasn't there. She spotted a faint shape drifting far out in the water, limp and barely conscious. Without hesitation, she dove in and swam toward him, dragging his exhausted body back to the ship like a lifeguard hauling in a half-drowned idiot who forgot he couldn't swim. Meanwhile, Mai, who had been silently observing everything from the shadows, finally stepped forward. She contacted her employer with blunt efficiency, reporting that Lu Mingfei survived, as expected. Her eyes then drifted to Norton, half stone, half flesh, still desperately trying to crawl away like a dying beast refusing to accept its end. Mai showed him no sympathy. She calmly raised her rifle, loaded with a specialized alchemic round, and fired one perfect shot. Norton's body convulsed as the bullet hit, and then the dragonkin collapsed completely. No roar, no final speech, no glory, just silence, just the end. She reported mission accomplished, tossed the rifle down like it was a plastic prop, and walked away. Later, Zero received unexpected news. Chu Zehong wasn't dead after all. He had simply rerouted to the nearest airport and was now resting, alive and irritated as usual. With that weight lifted, attention shifted to Mingfei, who was currently sitting stiffly in the principal's office like a kid waiting to be scolded after causing a school-wide blackout. Except, instead, the principal hit him with praise. Apparently, Mingfei had scored perfect marks, both in theory and combat, on the expedition. It was an achievement so rare, the school hadn't seen it in years. Mingfei sat there looking stunned, like someone had just handed him a medal he didn't remember earning. But the principal wasn't done. He immediately slapped a stack of papers on the desk and ordered Mingfei to write an academic thesis. After nearly dying underwater, Mingfei was now assigned homework. Perfect Cassell logic. The topic? The Twin Dragon Kings, created by the Black Dragon Emperor Nidhogg. The principal explained that Nidhogg had not created just one or two dragons. He created 4 pairs, 8 Dragon Kings total. They were designed to understand humanity by taking human form, studying emotions, living among people. Dragons basically running social experiments like undercover actors. Then came the bombshell. The principal pulled out an old photograph. A young old Tang, surrounded by friends, smiling like any normal guy. Mingfei stared in disbelief. The old man explained that old Tang had lived as a human, had adoptive parents, and after losing them, used his wealth to fund orphanages across China. A noble past. But then the principal dropped the truth Mingfei didn't want to hear. Even if Constantine hadn't died, old Tang would have eventually awakened and remembered who he was, Dragon King Norton. And once that happened, the destruction of humanity would have been inevitable. Old Tang's kindness had an expiration date, and Mingfei had unknowingly stopped a future apocalyptic event. Mingfei, still processing everything, finally asked why dragons were kept secret from the world. The principal's answer was simple: because people would panic. Governments would collapse. Civilization isn't ready to handle the truth. Then came a letter from Mingfei's parents, warm, encouraging, telling him how proud they were and how they looked forward to his graduation. For the first time in days, he smiled through tears. After surviving near death, a normal letter from home felt surreal. The principal wanted to ask more about Norton's defeat, and especially how Nono had survived. But Mingfei remembered Mingzei's strict warning and kept quiet. The principal didn't push. Back in the dorms, Mingfei returned to find Finger streaming his heroics online like a gossip blogger on caffeine. Furious, Mingfei nearly choked him out before Caesar walked in asking for salt like a chef on a mission. Finger casually spilled the news that room assignments had changed. Caesar and Chu Zihong were now roommates across the hall, while Nono and Zhang's assistant had moved next door. Nono soon appeared, carrying chocolate like a cute assassin with sweets. She thanked Mingfei for saving her underwater, saying his voice promising to protect her was the only thing that pulled her back to consciousness, though she didn't remember the details clearly. Finger dashed out of the room, diving for chocolate like a starving raccoon. Then a package arrived for Mingfei. Inside was a brand new phone, courtesy of Mingzei. Apparently, Mingzei felt Visionland was outdated and wanted better communication, though it was obvious he also wanted to monitor Mingfei like a helicopter parent with supernatural powers. Finally, in the principal's office, the old man reviewed Mingfei's 3 exam papers again. Tucked inside was a small drawing, Mingfei sitting beside Mingze, both framed by a window. The principal recognized Mingze immediately and without hesitation burned the drawing in his ashtray, watching the flames curl around the paper. Once the artwork reduced to ashes, he looked up at Mingfei with a calm smile and said, "Welcome back to the academy." Academy, the strangest welcome home imaginable. Thanks for watching the entire series. Please like, share, and subscribe to watch the latest anime recaps.